What's up, guys? It's Dominique, aka That Therapist. For those of you that don't know me, I am the lead clinician and CEO for a group practice known as Yellow Bird Counseling. If you want more information about that, you can go to my link tree in my bio on all my platforms and you can get more information. All my business is there. Okay? So, yes, I'm the lead clinician and CEO for a group practice known as Yellow Bird Counseling. Well, what is that? What's the Yellow Bird Counseling, you might ask? Like, what does that even mean? Well, our normal day-to-day activities include, but are not limited to, providing individual, couples, family, group therapy and or counseling in the states of Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi, New Jersey, and Idaho, soon with more states to come. All right, very, very soon with more states to come, but that's where we're at right now. So we service all of those states virtually, and we do offer in person in Alabama. So that's what we do. But what do we do here on social media? Well, the main mission of Yellowbird Nation is to break the stigma that surrounds mental health and wellness and making therapy something that everybody can relate to. So the way that we do that is we introduce live topics that the general population can relate to and tie it back to how we could all benefit from having a therapist outside of simply just having a mental illness. Because people think, oh, the only reason I need to go to therapy is if I'm crazy. But that's not true. That's just not true. In fact, if we were talking about the word crazy in its most authentic form, you probably would have too much going on for me to be able to benefit you. Meaning that you would need what? You would need much more than once or twice a week or every other week therapy, because you would be what we would call deranged. Okay, so crazy is like institutional deranged. Okay, maybe criminally insane. Okay, that's actually what crazy is. No, I service normal everyday people that may have varying mental illnesses or may have lives that they can't control and life be life in, and it be annoying and aggravating them, and so they need some help to get through that. So those people probably don't have a mental illness, but life be lifing on them just the same. You know what I'm saying? So that's what our whole goal is. So I say all that to say, let me, because I think I want to do a giveaway. Let me let my community know right quick. If you are not in my community, stay tuned because I'll definitely give you the number so you can text the word live to the community. So when I do want to do random giveaways, you are made aware of that. Okay. So, and you can, if you want to click the link tree in my bio, you can find that there. And that way you don't got to wait for the number. You can just you can go to the link tree and it'll ask you if you want to be in our giveaway. So you can click. All right. And then it'll tell you what to do. All right. So hold on, guys. Give me a second. Honoring. Give me a second, guys. Black History Month, because that's what it is. Okay. So, we're going to talk about how does racism impact mental health. Usually I have this done, but I have forgot. So that's why I'm doing it right now. But just hold on 1 second. Let me grab up this link right quick, and then we are gonna head on with the rest. Okay, it just took me just a few seconds. That's just all it took. It's just a few seconds. Okay, cool. All right. Now we're going to get going. So anyways, with this being such a hot topic and one that people decide that they want to have so many opinions about, I thought that it would be best if I utilize peer-reviewed articles in order to address the topic so that it doesn't just seem like I'm just speaking from my own opinion, my own stance, and my own perspective. Because that is definitely not the case. I want to offer y'all the most purest evidence empirically that I can, meaning it's peer-reviewed, it's been tested, the biases have been explored, and any other ethical dilemmas that could arise in research. So let's get to it. For y'all that are over here, I'll be able to share my screen. For the others on my other platforms, you're just going to have to follow along. I'll definitely give the names. But and we're not going to read them in their entirety. We're going to do what we're going to do is get the bulk from the abstract. Now, if we need to have more well-defined numbers, we will refer back to the article for that. Okay, because I'm doing this for a lot of reasons, because I realize that people don't like research because they don't understand how it works, why it works, and the way it works. So I feel like if I need to take you on that journey, because it is something that you do learn in higher education. You can learn it in high school, but more so higher education is, that's where you're going to get a lot more of your research experience. But I realize a lot of people have not gone to institutions of higher education and may not have that component to draw from. So they think that research is just something that somebody just found something to agree with them, and that's what it is. And I hear that jargon and I get that jargon, but that doesn't necessarily or at all apply to peer-reviewed research. I'm not using anecdotals, and if I do ever use anecdotals, I let you know. So since this topic is so serious, I did not just err on using any type of anecdotals, even as it pertains to my own practice. I wanted to get a sample set that was a lot larger than my own experience. That is what intelligence and education yields you. It yields you the ability to be able to make well-informed decisions. Okay, so those of y'all that be like, I don't need an education. You don't need an education. Do you need an education to make money? No, not necessarily. Do you need an education or educate yourself to be educated? Oh, yes, absolutely. Okay. And that you can't just err on your own experience. That would not be very intelligent. Okay. All right. So let's go. All right. So the first reference that I would like to make, as it relates to our topic, how does racism impact mental health? Again, because it is the first day of February, meaning it is the first day of Black History Month. So I want to focus on race and mental health. That's just what I want to focus on. Black race and mental health. So if you could tap my screen. Oh, y'all over here and everybody on these other platforms, if y'all could share, that would be great. Okay. All right. So let me share over here. Oh wait, no, not invite. Ooh, that's wrong. That ain't what I meant. I meant share. That's what I meant. I had meant, oh crap. Ugh. All right, hold on, y'all. Hold on. Share screen. Thank y'all for bearing with me while I'm trying to get everything flowing. Okay. So the first reference that I want to refer to is Mental Health America. And that is the mhnational.org, because you know .orgs, .edus, .govs are a little bit more reliable than .com. So I even went that extra mile not to even use Psychology Today, which are articles written from the perspectives of mental health professionals. But however, I did not use those, even if those are credible authors. Okay. So let's talk first about what is racism. Let's even just go there. What is that? So I think that's the best place to start, because a lot of people can't engage in a discussion if they don't have a general idea of the understanding of a term being used. Okay. And so we'll describe the two terms that I use, which is racism and mental health. So let me start by defining those. I'm going to start y'all off and build y'all up, because I want you to be well informed. Okay. So as it pertains to racism, a broad term describing the combination of race-based prejudice and y'all be missing this over here, and I need y'all to hear this the most. Y'all know who I'm talking to, because I'm pointing right at y'all. The combination of race-based prejudice, meaning that you're prejudging somebody solely because of this color of their skin, and power. That extra power component is what makes it racism, okay? So you have to think, what group of people would benefit from having race-based prejudice against someone and are in a position of power? I'm going to just leave it there. They have to have both in order for it to be called racism, okay? Both components have to be fulfilled. That's not me making this up. Again, this is a peer-reviewed article that I am using from Mental Health America. The website is mhnational.org, and the name of the article is simply Racism and Mental Health. Okay? Okay, so if you'd like to follow along, if you have any questions, all right? But there are other kinds of racism that don't just pertain to under the broader umbrella. So there's racism, and then there's things up under that umbrella. Okay. So, but let's finish reading this, because this is very important. We were talking about the definition of racism, a broad term describing the combination of race-based prejudice and power, not just race-based prejudice by itself. It has to be and power. Okay. Without the power differential, one person, group, institution has more power than another. Racism is just prejudice and carries less weight and fewer consequences. I don't know why I can't talk. Probably because I really literally just because I didn't have a 6:30 tonight. I did not. All right. So let's talk about systemic. Okay, this is not systematic. This is systemic/structural. Okay, so think of systemic structure. Okay, systemic/structural racism has three components: history. There's a history of it. Okay, there's a culture of it, and there's institution or policies, because some folks be like, well, show me the policy where Black people can't. Besides the Constitution, I don't know where else they would have that in contemporary times. There are other words that they use, okay? Dog whistles, if you will, that do say that, but it's not going to be blatantly your white bathrooms, your black bathrooms. We're just not that overt with it no more. It's more covert now, okay? Does not mean it's any less. It just means that it's more hidden. It's more hidden, than it was before. All right. So with that being said, there are three components to that structural or systemic/structural racism: the history of it, the culture of it, and the implementation of it into institutions. Okay. I'm going to break those down for you if you care to know, so you'll be well informed. Again, I like to start it from the bottom. Now, I can't have a discussion with you on racism and mental health if you don't know what those two terms mean separately and together. Okay, so that's what we're working up to. So, all right. So, sorry, lost my place. Historical racism provides the framework for current racism. That's very important. Okay. Okay, that's very important because a lot of people think that racism does not exist anymore. Okay, so this is a very important point because it speaks to the current existence, okay, of at least systemic racism, because that's what we're referring to. So this is what history does for present day racism. Historical racism provides the framework for current racism. So while it might look different, the bones of it are still the same. The intention still the same. All right, still the same. Any structure built on a foundation, history is the foundation, okay, that they speak of racism will be a racist structure. Okay, so basically any structure built on a racist history, okay, will perpetually be a racist structure. It doesn't change because it's 2024. It doesn't say anything about this structure changing based on time. So if you add that component in there, that is a problem that you have created for yourself and your own understanding, because I'm reading this peer-reviewed article from mentalhealthnational.org, okay? And this is a peer-reviewed article explaining to me what these definitions are, explaining to me how they're used, giving examples, because that is the way to find the correct evidence for a claim, okay? And the claim of this live is that racism impacts mental health. So I even went to the Mental Health America website. Okay, I even went to a .org for y'all. I even got one on PubMed as well, but this is the one that I chose to start with first because it had more of the bare bones foundational definitions that I needed in order to fully have this discussion. Okay, so all right, so that's the historical component. Okay, there's three components. We talked about historical, now we're on to cultural. Culture, which is ever present in our everyday, in our day-to-day lives, okay, is what allows racism to be accepted because it's normalized, it's perpetuated. Institutions is the third component. Institutions and policies make up the fundamental relationships and rules across society, which reinforce racism and give it its social legitimacy, which makes it so hard to dismantle. Okay, I feel like that's the most broken down I've ever heard it given to y'all, okay, in a discussion. Not only did we talk about the components that the word racism is made up of, but we talked about now the types of racism that fall under that umbrella, and that's only just one type, okay? But let's talk about that piece as it pertains to mental health, okay? So, and I want everybody to think, if you were, and I know we're talking specifically about Black folks because it's Black History Month. So that's who I'm focusing on because it's what it is, Black History Month. So if you are every day, I want you to think, no matter what color you are, if you're Black, you already know the experience. You can just grab a bag of popcorn while I help the others empathize, okay? But if you have to walk out of your door, front door, not even walk out of your front door, turn on your television, turn on your laptop, turn on your iPad, whatever device you turn on to get media. Racism, what I just read about systemic racism means that it's in everything. And the main three components that it's in that we can't escape, and two of these we can't escape on a daily basis. There's historical components that perpetuates the way it's done. Racism has the same intention, goal that it has always had, and history helps uphold that. Racism is like hard on sticking with how things used to be. Okay, it's hard on sticking with the history, how it's always been done. And it has always been done to oppress Black people. That was the whole intention behind systemic racism, is to oppress Black people. Okay, so because of that, it has been embedded in our culture. That same sentiment has been embedded in our culture, and it has also been embedded in our institutions, okay? Places that we have to engage with on a day-to-day basis, culture that we have to engage with on a day-to-day basis. So if there is an ideology that is perpetuating that you are less than someone else based on your color, I'm just asking y'all, how do you think it would impact your mental health? I'm just asking you a simple question. How do you all think? Give me your thoughts on how you think just systemic racism alone could impact a person's mental health. I want to see what your thoughts are on that. But I'm telling you, it's a system that is meant to oppress, okay? And bring submission to. And I say that because there are two components to racism that I read: prejudice and power. Okay? And the prejudice pretty much, it's symbiotic, the relationship that prejudice and power has in racism, okay? Because the power perpetuates the prejudice perpetuates the power. In that, you're prejudiced because you're closer in proximity to a place of power, okay? It gives you more cool points. Gives you more cool points if you associate with power. Y'all see where I'm going with this? Do you see the ways it can affect your mental health? If you don't, please let me know so I can answer any questions that you have. But I feel like the foundation that I'm laying for you is pretty straightforward. It's pretty straightforward, okay? So, now that we've debunked the fact that racism is not just in the past, okay, we've debunked that because historically racism, the foundation of it, has provided the structure of what it is today, even if it looks different. Now, I can read that again if you need me to. I will do that. So, because I know folks get like touchy and they are like, people are victimizing, and it's not true. Okay. Systemic racism is a present day term that we use. Systemic/structural racism has three components: history, culture, and institution/policy. Historical racism provides the framework for current racism. Any structure built on a foundation, such as history, of racism will be a racist structure, okay? If it was ever America was built on a racist structure or on a racist foundation, its history is racist. So America in and of itself is a racist structure, okay? Now, I didn't make that up. I literally just read that from a peer-reviewed article. All right, so do you understand that if something is built on a racist structure and the people that it's meant to target are perpetually being targeted in their culture, in their society, in any institution that they engage with, how might that affect that individual or group's mental health? What do you think may happen? You tell me. I'm asking y'all. While y'all answer that, let's move on to what interpersonal racism is, okay? And this is the one y'all really get hung up on. This is the only type of racism that y'all think exists when it does not, okay? Interpersonal racism is racism that happens between individual people when individual beliefs or prejudices become actions towards others, okay? That's the only type of racism y'all think is this. Is the white bathroom, black bathroom, or don't touch me because you're black, you might burn my clothes. That is like so old. Like even like just some whatever racist terms you can think of. That's all y'all think racism is, and it's just not the case. In fact, it wasn't even the first thing. Systemic/structural racism was the first type of racism. The second one was interpersonal. So it's not even the first type of racism that was listed. Okay. So just for those of you that get hung up on interpersonal racism, okay, thinking that's the only kind of racism that exists. And because maybe you're not a person that engages in that does not mean you don't engage in one of the other types of racism. And you know who I'm talking to, because obviously if racism is a structure that was made to benefit people of lighter skin, but more specifically people that identify as whitey, whatever, then that means that the people that the system is meant to oppress are Black people, people like me, okay? All right? So, just because you don't engage in interpersonal racism does not mean you don't benefit or engage with systemic racism, which is what I read the definition of first. Okay? All right, cool. Let's move on. Let's talk more about institutional racism, just so you'll know what does that really mean. Institutional racism occurs within and between institutions, okay? Within an institution, like inside of it, and amongst it, or between two, okay? Institutional racism is just discriminatory treatment, okay? So discriminatory treatment, we're laying it out for those of you that are like, I don't see no policies. Discriminatory treatment, number one. Unfair policies, number two. And inequitable opportunities. Inequitable opportunities. And those are the ones y'all want to be looking over. Y'all want to only think that it's just discriminatory words and or interpersonal racism. That's not true. We've got discriminatory treatment that falls under institutional racism, unfair policies, and inequitable opportunities and impacts based on race. Okay? Produced and perpetuated by institutions. These institutions include, but are not limited to, schools, mass media, schools and mass media, work, financial institutions, okay? Individuals within institutions take on the power of the institution, okay? When they act in ways that advantage and disadvantage people based on race. So are people getting advantaged or disadvantaged based on their race? So for those of us who are getting disadvantaged based on our race, for those of you that are not getting disadvantaged based on your race, do you understand that simply the color of your skin determining whether you deserve an opportunity or not could cause some mental health concerns? If you're perpetually, continuously, daily being discriminated against by a characteristic about yourself that you cannot change, you were born the way you were born, okay? But because of that, you were judged based on how you were born, what your skin is, your phenotype, okay? That was another thing. I didn't break down race for us. I started with racism instead of starting with race, okay? So I'm explaining this, okay? There's also, oh no, not they. I'm glad they put reverse racism in freaking quotations, because y'all know that that's an oxymoron. That's not a thing. You can't have you can't have reverse racism. Like it can't, like what? That's not what that would be. Reverse racism would be dismantled racism. It wouldn't be the oppressed becoming the oppressor, because so much we don't have in order for us Black people to become the oppressor, we would have to have one of those components. The one that we will lack is the foundational component of history. We don't have a history of being in prejudiced power based on race. That's why we cannot be racist. We cannot engage in that system because we do not have that foundation, which is the history. Okay. All right. So internalized racism, which is a thing, or another word that we would use called anti-Blackness. And I will break that down separately on a different live. I'm starting with the foundation of everything. Where racism and white supremacy affect the minds of Black. Okay, it says of Black, Indigenous. They spelled out BIPOC because I thought it was just Black. I was like, oh Lord, we're not using this no more. Okay, when racism and white supremacy affect the minds of Black, Indigenous, and people of color and other people of color to the point where they begin to believe they are inferior, okay? That's what I was hinting at. They're going to believe they're inferior because of their own race. This can sometimes lead to interracial hostility, okay? This can lead to interracial hostility in which BIPOC treat other BIPOC in a way that mirrors how white racists might treat them, okay? Another way internalized racism can manifest is by BIPOC accepting and internalizing Eurocentric ideals and values. Getting away from Blackness. This is how, so racism, let's get back to the mental health piece of it. In short, racism, the ideology of it, the implementation and practice of it, whether it's interpersonal or systemic, causes Black, Indigenous, and other people of color to have issues with our own identity. Racism is insidious to the identity of BIPOC people. And if your identity is in question all the time, based on external variables, the ones that I just gave you above, interpersonal racism, systemic/structural racism, if that's all you're exposed to, now you think you're inferior. Might you see how Black, Indigenous, and other people of color might deal with anxiety? If they are forced to carry around what we call in the field of psychology a core belief that they are inferior, might you understand why depression exists solely just based on this alone? Not even talking about other things that can impact BIPOC people outside of race. We're just focusing on this because it is Black History Month, okay? So I wanted to focus on this. So might you start to see how being subjugated to a system of racism can break somebody's psyche down. And so for all the Black people like that, this isn't our fault. We did not cause this, it's been in place. Like you said, there's history. That is why we need therapy. We need therapy to deal with the trauma, the historical and generational trauma that comes with racism. And then people that are not BIPOC, YT, people that are YT, they need to go to therapy to see how to impact and unpack their participation, whatever it is, whether they're engaging interpersonally in racism, whether they're engaging and or benefiting systemically and structurally from racism. Okay, what are they doing to engage in those types of racism? And for BIPOC people, what are we doing that causes us to perpetuate internalized racism? What are we doing that causes us to behave in ways that we would denote as anti-Black? Okay, which I will go on to talk about that in the coming weeks. Okay. Please tap the screen, share the live if you like what you hear. If you could help me, if you don't mind tapping my screen and sharing. All right. So I'm gonna read the reverse racism thing, but also understand I don't think it's a thing. This term is in quotes to emphasize that, the term is in quotes to emphasize that it's a made up term. Okay, that shouldn't carry any actual value. I'm glad. I'm like, yeah, that's why they put it in quotes. It's not a real thing. It was a term created by and for white people who want to perpetuate racism by denying their privilege in all of its forms and by claiming that fighting to improve the lives of BIPOC is somehow racist against white people. Mental Health America considers the term invalid because racism in any form depends on the presence of power differential. Again, and we see YT people all the time wanting to ignore that power differential. But if you ignore the power differential, then we're not any longer talking about racism. We're talking about something else because the power differential is exactly what makes the term, okay? White people have historically always fallen on the powerful side rather than the powerless side. Reverse racism is therefore impossible, like I just said, as long as we live in a society that perpetuates white supremacy. But again, there's no way to really undo that. There's no other supremacy that could arise because you have to have, in order for something to be as impactful and as strong as structural racism, you have to have a history of it. So without the history of it, there can't be any structure, because the history of it is the foundation of the structure, okay? The use of power by a system, institution, group, or individual to dominate over another, or the refusal of a system, institution, group, or individual who possesses this power to challenge that domination. That's it? I thought I was going to say something else. Okay. So this is what oppression is, okay, guys? Because I was thinking it was going to be more than that. The use of power to dominate over another, or the refusal of a system, okay, who possesses this power to challenge that domination. So if you possess it and you don't challenge white people, this is how you engage. If you are in a position of power solely based on your skin color and you don't challenge that dominant system, you are engaging in racism, and that is also engaging in oppression. You are engaging in oppression. Okay. So let's go on to the mental health piece. But let me look at to see if anyone has any questions. This was one of my many reasons I started therapy. The minute I learned that we could inherit trauma as far back as slavery, I was shocked. Post-traumatic slave syndrome, the longitudinal study done by Dr. Joy DeGruy, that was very good to break that down and break and expose you to the ways that post-traumatic slave syndrome presents in us today. But for people that try to discount the impact of history on today, I'm sharing my screen and showing you that cannot be farther from the truth. History absolutely very much foundationally impacts what we experience today. While people try to discount history, don't let them play in your face and discount history like that. And, oh, that was so long ago. So, and that's for your personal history too. But it's because you can't have trauma without a history. You can't have trauma without a history. You can't have complex trauma without a history. There is a history. There has to be a history in order for it to be a trauma, okay? So for this, there has to be a history in order for it to be structurally or systemically racism, okay? Yep. She don't play at all. She sure don't. It's generational pathology, absolutely. In the incorporation of epigenetics, let us, y'all are knowing this. Y'all are knowing this. So we're going to proceed. We're going to proceed with this, and we'll get a little bit more of this, okay? All right, so let's get into the nitty-gritty of it. Misdiagnosis of schizophrenia. Woo! Woo! Oftentimes, BIPOC people are misdiagnosed. That's why that's one of the reasons that it's very important for your therapist to be culturally aware or culturally engaged, i.e. meaning that they are also Black, because misdiagnosis can happen by non-Black people of Black behaviors, okay? Let's get into it. Misdiagnosis of schizophrenia. When treating Black/African American clients, clinicians tend to overemphasize the relevance of psychotic symptoms and overlook symptoms of major depression compared to when they are treating clients with other racial or ethnic backgrounds. For this reason, Black men in particular are greatly overdiagnosed with schizophrenia. They are 4 times more likely to be diagnosed with schizophrenia than their white male counterparts. Furthermore, Black people in general are significantly more likely to be diagnosed with schizophrenia alone when a mood disorder is also present. When a mood disorder is also present than with white people. Schizophrenia is a disorder that by definition must be diagnosed by exclusion, meaning that the symptom of it can't be explained by another psychiatric disorder like a mood disorder. Therefore, the fact that Black people end up with schizophrenia diagnosis without a mood disorder diagnosis, despite the clinical presence of mood disorder, means that the symptoms are being ignored and explains in large part why the diagnosis rate of schizophrenia is so much higher in Black populations than white. A direct racial discrimination in the field of psychiatry and psychology of which I work. This is why it is imperative for us to raise the percentage of Black clinicians that there are currently in the field. There are only 4% of Black clinicians in the mental health field. The other 96% are non-Black people. So how can you have 13% of the American population Black people and only 4% of us can serve the other, what is that? What would that be? 9% of us, 10%, 9-10% of us, 4% of us can't serve the other 9% and also be getting services ourselves. With that, you have YT clinicians that ignore symptomology, one, because they are probably blind to it because it's not their experience. So they are unable to provide effective health in an experience that they aren't aware of. Said what I said. All right, I'm gonna let y'all. That's just, I wanted to make y'all aware. Of course, there's way more in this article, but I think the meat of it is what we got. Of course, there's other stats here of the breakdown of mental health diagnosis and disparities. Also, some quick stats down here. Name of the article again is Racism and Mental Health. I found this article on Mental Health America, or mhnational.org. And so you can look it up. But I helped y'all. I started y'all off. You know what I'm saying? I did start y'all. All right. So let's go on over to this next article, but let me ask y'all if y'all had any questions about what I just read. Any questions about what I just read? This reminds me also of the disparity of ADHD diagnosis with Black youth. There was once a time a ton of kids were on Ritalin for no reason. Yep. Absolutely. People don't take their time in diagnosing. I always do. They don't take their time, and it's very important to take your time because, again, a diagnosis starts to create a history for a person. So in order for you to make sure that you're not mislabeling the occurrences in their history, you want to be sure that you are being thorough in a diagnostic evaluation. So it takes me a few sessions, okay? Takes a few sessions. And when I say few, I mean 6 to 8 to even and that's me getting assessments, over that short period of time to gather at least the beginning of a trend. Yeah, it's just a lot that goes into that, and you want to be as accurate as possible. Whenever a diagnosis is given to myself or my family, I start to research to see if I agree. Absolutely, as you should. As you should. As you should. With most of my clients, I say, okay, we're seeing symptoms of this. I'm very careful to say symptoms of this, okay? Because there are other variables that can mimic symptoms of a diagnosis, but it may not be that actual diagnosis. So, but again, if you are blind to a whole experience of a client, then you won't be able to differentiate those types of trends or even pay attention to them because you're not aware of them. All right, so this is our PubMed article. The name of this is Racism and Mental Health and the Role of Mental Health Professionals, okay? For those of you that would like a PMID code, it is 341134809. Again, for those of you that would like a PMID code to reference yourself, it is 3413489. Okay. Let's go on to see what this study sought to evaluate under the topic of racism and mental health and the role of the mental health professional. I think that was a good segue from our last article. The concept of race and consequently of racism is not a recent phenomenon. Although it has profound effects on the lives of populations over the last several hundred years, using slaves and indentured labor for racial groups designated to be the others, that's quote unquote, who was seen as inferior and thus did not deserve privileges, and who were often deprived of the rights to life and basic needs as well as freedoms. Thus, creation of the other or the basis of physical characteristics and dehumanizing them became more prominent. Racism is significantly related to poor health, including mental health. The impact of racism in psychiatric research and clinical practice is not sufficiently investigated. Findings clearly show that the concept of race is genetically incorrect. Therefore, the implicit racism that underlies many established scientific paradigms need to be changed. Okay, so for example, that was a lot that said, but basically, I'll give you an example. There are racist underpinnings, okay? There are racist underpinnings in ideologies that we possess in the medical, mental health, psychiatric, clinical fields. One that y'all may be aware of is that this is just a general medicine one, that Black people, more specifically Black women, can endure more pain. Like that we have thicker skin that can endure more pain. Okay, and thus have been granted less pain management because we're supposed to be able to endure it more. And that is a fallacy. That is a false. That is not true. But because you had medical professionals being trained under that ideology, a lot of their Black and brown patients were not getting the adequate management that they needed because their practitioners were trained that they should be able to endure more pain. I'll continue. Yeah. Where was I at? Okay, so the impact of racism in psychiatric research and clinical practice is not sufficiently investigated. Already read that. Therefore, the implicit racism that underlines many established scientific paradigms needs to be changed. Excuse me. Furthermore, to overcome the internalized, interpersonal, and institutional racism that we talked about earlier. Okay, we already talked about that. That's why I read that article first. Furthermore, to overcome the internalized, interpersonal, and institutional racism, the impact of racism on health and on mental health must be an integral part of educational curricula, which it is not currently, okay? For undergrad levels through continued professional development, clinical work, and research, and awareness of the consequences of racism at all levels, micro, meso, and macro. Recommendations for clinical / policymakers and researchers are worked out. Okay. How do I get back to the rest of this? It's a PubMed disclaimer. Okay. All right. So race. Okay, so they give us race, racism, and ethnocentrism. The definitions of those. The role of genetics in the concept of race. All right. This kind of is a more in-depth explanation of what we read on the other article, and just kind of breaking things down as far as the sample set that they use. So I was trying to see if there was anything that I wanted to elaborate further on as far as it that we didn't already talk about. All right, so let's talk about the role of genetics in the concept of race and racism. The concept of race has historically been used as a taxonomic categorization based on common hereditary traits such as skin color to let's see, or okay, hereditary traits to include the relationship between our ancestry and our genes. Okay, the question does not relate only to physiological, ethical, or political aspects, but also to health ones, as clinicians taking care of patients with mental disorders need to take into account the connection between race, ethnicity, genetics, and health. So those are things that I know that I talk to my clients about very regularly, and how all these things tie together. And a lot of times with my BIPOC clients, more specifically my Black clients, we do talk about the role of race and how how they're being impacted systemically, how they're being impacted interpersonally, how they're being impacted culturally, okay, and systemically is the bigger broader term that encapsulates that that institutional racism, cultural and historical racism. Okay. So we do have to talk about that as it relates to mental health, because it's something that very much does impact their mental health. Okay. I would be remiss to ignore that. Okay. Or I would be YT because I wouldn't be aware of it. Okay. So I think I didn't want to tried to only share with y'all the most meaty parts of it, so you didn't have to do all the nerdy parts. And if you were interested in the nerdy parts, you could go back to doing the nerdy part on your own. But for those of you that just wanted a general flyby knowledge, I hope that I gave you that. Okay, let's make sure. We should all do this, to be honest. Absolutely. It is big time false. I was at the doctor's office and heard the front desk lady stating I should not be feeling any more pain. It was about MTH after my knee surgery. Of course, I said something to the doctor. Yeah, absolutely. Because again, should not be, huh? Why not? And then we get into the meat of the problem. Do y'all have any questions? We are going to build off of that, but I wanted you to get your minds percolating so that when I talk about behaviors that us as BIPOC folks engage in that are anti-Black, that are internalized acts of racism, and how we do want to make sure that we are doing our part to get our mental health in check. Now, our YT counterparts, it's up to them to decide if they want to do their part or do the dismantling of the racism, because we can't dismantle a system we didn't create. Okay. They created it by way of their forefathers. So they have to, in order for them to actively act against it, thus being anti-racist, they would have to see and make themselves aware of the ways they engage with it and be actively dismantling the ways that they're currently engaging in it. So, white people, that's what y'all can do. Black people, unfortunately, we have to heal from a place that maybe the experience didn't start from us. Okay, we have to heal generationally, and so that is where therapy would benefit us. And if we are able to get in with one of the 4% of Black therapists, that is a great place to start. Or a white therapist who is doing their anti-racist work, because I have those. I do have those. And culturally aware non-BIPOC therapists, so that they are not ignoring symptomologies that their clients could be experiencing, which leads to a misdiagnosis. Okay? Do y'all have any other questions for me? Comments, concerns? All right, guys. Well, this was just the foundation of the 4-part that we're going to be talking about. We're going to be building on racism and talking more about how does that impact in the different ways and the expressions of how that impacts the mental health of Black people. Okay. So we've been here a little over an hour. We usually are over 2 hours, but I'm gonna let y'all go a little early tonight so you could do some of your own research. But I showed you the 2 articles. I referenced them for those of you that can't see them, so you can go back and do your own research with it. It's like you find those who will OD you, or they want to pinch the meds and say, I shouldn't be feeling it. Yep, exactly. 2 extremes. Never a happy medium, or at least not even about happy medium, but just getting what the client or the patient needs equitably, like receiving equitable treatment. So But yes. All right, guys. If you do want to follow me on TikTok and you want to keep up with me over there when I do more impromptu things outside of our Thursday mental health talks that typically happen around 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, which is 9 p.m. Eastern, which is 7 p.m. Mountain, which is 6 p.m. Pacific. You can catch me over there. My @ is that_therapist1. So that THAT_therapist, THERAPIST. Did I leave the R out? Yeah, no, I didn't. Number 1, and that's on TikTok. You can follow me over there. All right. But I'm glad to start this conversation with y'all and continue the acknowledgement of Black History Month with y'all. So definitely stay tuned, and I will see you all next week.